camera? Oh, it's back there.
I have the logo going, and now I hit it to the auto logo.
Okay.
And then I watch that to make sure that the automation is shifting.
That we're actually there.
To the next image. And that it all looks like it's going, which it is.
And you have sound.
And now we're on camera number 1.
All right.
I can come over and sit down and join you.
Nice.
Yay. Hello.
Welcome.
Good to be here.
Now, I didn't test everybody's microphone, but we're going to go on a prayer and a. If I was really prudent, I'd go back over there right now and make sure I was getting. But I think I have all the settings correct.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
and I've been working for weeks on that audio dynamic to try to get as reasonably good audio with all this old equipment.
Have you ever listened to the radio show that I co-host and Joe records sometimes on KBOO Radio?
I don't know if I've heard you on there.
Dirtbag, and it's every second Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m.
And you produce it at home and then send it over there?
And typically we do it in the studio.
Yeah.
At
During
KBOO?
COVID, we did it at home.
Well, you know, my big photo studio of 10 plus years was right around, like 2 blocks from there on Southeast 6th and Oak. That's where I used to do a lot of work.
Cool.
And I knew people, and I still know people. Eugen Rashad and Marcia Hawker. They're some of the music people. So you're doing it. What's the name of it again?
The Dirtbag.
The Dirtbag.
DIRTBAG.
And it's him and another guy, and they talk about gardening and plants
and you go over there and produce it for them?
Well, during COVID, we did everything remote. So I was the engineer all through COVID, and then now when they actually do it in studio in Portland at KBOO, then they have another engineer doing that. But every once in a while, we have to pre-record it.
I see. Yeah. Well, I'm sitting here, Jon Deshler. Hello, everybody, from the Mount Angel Theater studio on an unusually fall-like feeling day at the very beginning inception of September 2024 with dear old friend Mr. Joe Wilson and old acquaintance Mr. Jim Gilbert. Without going and belaboring into it too much, when I first returned to the area, a little old historic townette called Markham, I met both of these gentlemen under different circumstances, but absolutely pertaining to the fact that we were all kind of, let me think about how I want to say this. We were all
younger.
Mindful, we were all younger, but we were all mindfully engaged in our endeavors, which were slightly nuanced and unique, you might say, given where we were.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I'm going to use that as the most graceful segue I can come up with on the fly, and suggest and tell people why we're sitting here. And that's because Joe and Jim got together how long ago in this endeavor?
2019.
Yeah.
So that's about 5 6 years ago.
Yeah, amazing.
Almost 6 years ago, in the endeavor to make a film, a bona fide, full-blown, highly produced, feature-length film called An Oregon Story. Can somebody give me the full name?
Jim.
An Oregon Story, saving our beaches, farmland, and more.
That's it.
Was that
That's the full
how
time.
long did it take to come up with that?
About 10 seconds.
Okay. 5 years ago?
Yeah. Well,
Or was it refined over time?
It was refined over time, but but I just refer to it as An Oregon Story. That's the easiest way. And the website, anoregonstory.com.
Well, it's a wonderful name,
Yeah.
and I'm surprised it was available, of course.
Oh, yeah.
That's the next thing you have to say.
Yeah.
I know Joe because at one time Joe was the editor of a local country paper, a small, beautiful little town in Molalla, Oregon. Shout out to everybody we know in Molalla. We're only about 9 miles as a crow flies from there. And Jim has run a nursery for what, well over 50 years?
I started it in 1979, so it's about 45 years.
45 years, called Northwoods Nursery.
Yep.
.com.
There is a website, but that, yes, northwoodsnursery.com.
And your specialty all those years, as I vaguely recall, and maybe you reminded me somewhat recently as we reconnected, is kind of unique species that survive here in Oregon?
Of fruiting plants.
specifically of fruiting
It
plants.
didn't start out quite that clearly, but as it's evolved into really a major focus on fruit.
And who's your end user? Farmers, private people, homeowners?
Yeah, our primary market is home gardeners.
Okay.
And our goal is varieties that do well this side of the Cascade Mountains in our unique Pacific Northwest climate.
That are from all over the world.
Yes.
And to that end, as I recall, you've traveled all over the world looking for species that you think might, based on, I suppose, your perception of the surroundings and the environmental and climatic situations, would do so well here.
Yep, and also taste good.
And also taste good. So, and I remember hearing all about that at various points in time, and I just think it's wonderful because I'm quite a little haphazard hobby gardener myself, and I just froze 6 gallons of plums, and I just dried about 5 gallons of pears.
Good for you.
And I try.
Wow.
It's a lot to do.
Yeah, it is.
While you're doing all of this stuff too. But I love the fact that the ground and the soil is indicative of the original bounty. Frankly, I say to a lot of my students, that led to us and our 8 fingers opposing thumbs and so-called large, fat, powerful brain. Anyways, all of that remains to be seen. And Joe, you've become a bit of an independent photographer, producer the last 10...
Yeah, since 2012. So
Since
from
2012?
1991 to 2012, I was a newspaper guy.
Okay.
That's where I met you. That's where I met you.
Right.
And actually, Jim also wrote a gardening column in that paper, in the Malala Pioneer.
Wonderful.
Just remembered that.
Yeah.
And then in 2012, I left the newspaper industry and decided I would be a commercial photographer. You know what that is. And then so many of my clients kept asking me, "Kate, can you do video too?" And you ask a commercial photographer enough times, he'll start saying he can do it.
Right.
And then you just figure it out.
Well,
That's what I did.
particularly if they're offering actual
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reasonable budgets, because I, as someone with my own history in that regard, can tell you that it is a quagmire and a potential bottomless pit, much like a boat, unless you're very careful.
Oh, yeah.
And this effort here is indicative of that, I might add. So I'm so glad you guys could join me today. So I'm going to try to keep this agenda on track, and forgive me, and I will attempt to do so, again, as eloquently and kindly as I can. One of the reasons they stopped by today was to bring me some promotional posters for their film. And when did you guys actually release the film?
Well, we completed in December, I think.
Of 2023.
Yep.
Yeah, and started showing it. We showed
January.
it in theaters in January of 2024.
The first few months of this year, we showed it in quite a few theaters, up and down the coast, and yeah.
So which one was your so-called premiere? Did you have a so-called premiere?
The first one? What was the first one? That would have been in January. I don't think I was at that one.
Look how you can have interactivity without a flat screen.
It looks all 3D.
You can bounce a big, springy
Yeah.
paper, actual paper, another flat surface.
Yeah.
I do that for all the entertainment of all my friends who really know me, and
a
the
guy.
kids who have known me as students.
So on the image is a guy, a farmer, with looks like his daughter on his
Hold it
lap.
down, Joe, will
Yeah, his daughter on his lap on the tractor. Because it kind of denotes that's for the kids, for the future.
What's it say? Can somebody tell me?
Down at the very bottom,
Yeah.
it says presented by Parkdale Valley Land Trust.
Pull that over to you.
Presented by Parkdale Valley Land Trust in association with Bergman Productions. Produced by Jim Gilbert, directed and edited by Joe Wilson. Filmed on location in Oregon and Washington.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. I will put at least one of these prominently on the front of the theater in the next day or so,
Cool.
as I
Nice.
strategically manage the very delicate front of the theater, I might add, since I just put some posters up out there for the Oktoberfest programming. So the bottom line is, during the Oktoberfest 2024 Mount Angel Oktoberfest, right here, Ground Zero, 220 East Charles Street, across the street from the City Hall, caddy corner to the post office, and a half a block away from, yes, you got it, the Glockenspiel itself. Don't get me started.
Yeah.
I have derogatory things to say about the Glockenspiel, but it doesn't serve anybody for me to do that right now, so I'm not going to do so. But in an attempt to keep it light, you know, I like to share my heart. And I'm going to show their film, the full-length version, 80 minutes, right? Thursday and Friday. The times will be on the website shortly. They're on the front of the building currently. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I'll show the 25-minute version. I think I put it in each day.
Yeah, you did. Yep.
And the irony is, it's going to mesh very well. I don't know if you guys looked into it at all, but my friend Mike Turner down there in Silverton had started last year the first annual Silver Falls Film Festival. And so they just had their second one. I missed it last Friday night. It was supposed to be the previous Friday night, but with the weather we've been having, they do it outdoors at the McLean Park over there. And so in any regards, he's going to give me, I believe, a thumb drive full of either entrances or ones that he accepted, or maybe award-winning films, or just other locally produced films, because I like to be, in my own sense, organic, Jim. And if it's local humanity, I kind of loosely use that term as organic, as opposed to plastic being brought in on a big ship somewhere, damn train or something, you know. So that's where I come from. But so I'm very happy that I'm going to get to show this film. I did watch the full-length version about 2 weeks ago, 1.5 weeks, 2 weeks ago, after I only ran into these guys. Literally a couple weeks before that, serendipitously, I saw Joe at a business event. I hadn't seen him in well over 5 years. I know it was definitely before COVID. And so the universe and my ability to be elastic with my synapses, and them too, has allowed us to bring this thing together to get a very good cause and some good work exposed. So that being said, I want, Jim, if you could please put into your words, as you have to me, I know, at least once or twice before, that kind of personal dynamic in your life that led to you being willing, and not only willing, but really wanting to tell this story of Oregon land use.
Well, I've been farming for, as I said, for about 45 years, and living in Oregon all my life, and doing traveling too. But I grew up in Portland, and I remember when I was 16 years old, I got my driver's license, and one of the first journeys I took was out the Columbia River Gorge. And I was I loved that area, and to be able to drive out there myself was pretty fun. And I went to Cascade Locks, and just past Cascade Locks there was an island in the river, and it was this beautiful little island with some fir trees growing on it, and a beautiful green spot. And I just thought, that is so beautiful. I mean, and then I continued my journey, went up the Highway 35 from Hood River, and went around Mount Hood. This is one of my first solo journeys, in my old family. My family's 1951 Chevrolet.
16 years old or such?
I was 16. Yeah, I got my driver's
16
license.
years old. Used to be a serious rite of passage.
16th birthday. I got my permit on my 15th birthday, and my driver's license on my 16th, and I was into it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I saw this beautiful island, and I just was so appreciative of the Columbia Gorge, and I'd fallen in love with it already. So when I was 17, I took the same journey. And in between those 2 years, the apparently Army Corps of Engineers, with for various reasons, they had made a gravel mine out of that, or a rock quarry out of that island. and built the jetty at the Columbia River, mouth of the Columbia River, and I was so blown away by that, to see this beautiful island just become a big pile of rock.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, there's something really wrong with that. But I didn't really, I didn't know about laws that forbid that sort of stuff or permit it or whatever. But it definitely made an impression on me. So that's just a very long ago thing. And then I did whatever I did in life. And
Huge. Huge. What happens to us as kids or young people is huge. And I will just pause you for a minute, if I may, to interface with you in this regard. And I don't know how much of this I told you, but I had similar early life experiences in my dad's single-engine, four-place, 1948 canvas-covered Stinson station wagon airplane, because he wrote a book on flying and camping in the western United States, and we would go all the time and do this thing. But you would do that in a small plane, and you would often be 3, 4, 5,000 feet above the ground. And at that elevation, you can see everything. You can see everywhere man stood and took advantage. And so this is why we're doing this, and we're brothers in that, because a different journey really has taken us. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm even trying to do this whole podcasting effort, because it is about mindfulness, so please continue.
So as I grew up, I got older, I started the nursery business in Hood River in 1979, moved it to the Willamette Valley in 1982. It was a hard scrabble time. I mean, I didn't have any money, and I had to buy this piece of land, anyway. But I was pretty happy, because where I lived in Hood River, I was up on the mountains, and I had no electricity and no phone and no indoor plumbing, and 3 miles from the nearest neighbor and my mailbox. So when I moved to the place I am now, I was like, wow.
How many acres was that Hood River place?
It was actually 62 acres.
Oh, my heavens.
But it was
but nothing else.
But it was a beautiful view of Mount Hood.
And a shorter growing season, I would imagine.
Yes, and only about 1.5 acres of flat ground.
Okay. Buffer. You had a lot of buffer. Yeah.
A beautiful spot. But then it was 2,000 foot elevation, so when it would snow, it would snow a lot sometimes. And one year, the second year I think I was there, we got about 4 feet of snow, and my little trees out in the nursery, as the snow would thaw and freeze and thaw and freeze, it just drug the branches off the trees.
Broke them.
Yep. So I thought, this is not where I need to go where the real farmers are.
How big is the Northwoods Nursery in its current location?
We have 66 acres.
Really?
Yeah.
Outside of Malala?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
No mountains.
Yeah.
But a beautiful view.
It's a fine place.
It's a fine location. I've always loved that whole, it's this area is where it is,
And the farmland is great. There's water for irrigation. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better spot to be farming. And we live in this funny little spot we call the Liberal Nook, because there is a Liberal Oregon, and our nursery is between Liberal and Needy.
Oh, wow. How many?
How many what?
How many of you? 2, 3, 4?
Well, yeah, right.
In that little vicinity. I know how, Needy and Liberal, that's not too big.
No, they're very
and
small.
I'm thinking the blue content is pretty small, too.
Well, there's no boundary around Liberal, so I don't know how many people. I joked the other day, well, I could be the mayor of Liberal.
Yeah.
But there's no city, but it's just a name on the highway as you go by now.
Now, you ran for office, I imagine, to have impact similarly on this subject.
Well, that's in it.
When was that, 10, 12 years ago?
No, it was longer than that. 2004 was my first attempt.
Okay.
And about that time, I became chair of what we call our community planning organization, which is Clackamas County's way of having citizen input on planning decisions.
Got it.
And I was aware that there were a lot of challenges going on in our area with planning, and probably the first one that became apparent to me was the city of Malala planned to take treated sewage water, which at that point was the overflow from their sewage ponds was going into a creek, to run a pipe over to the Malala River and put it into the river. And I and a bunch of my friends, we thought that was a terrible idea. Well, the Malala at that point had no point source pollution, and I swam in it and loved swimming in it, and so we fought it, and we lost. But in the process, I became more aware of land use issues and became chair of our CPO, local CPO.
Did the city get to put that water in the river?
Yeah.
Is it going on to this day?
Yep.
That's treated water from the city usage.
Effluent. I believe they call
Effluent
it.
that's being treated. They say it's safe.
Yeah, of course, but
Yeah.
there's all sorts of stuff in that water.
I agree with you.
And
It's
then
a-
that water
it's a-
goes to Canby.
And Canby takes water out of the Malala River.
Yeah, poor people
Incredible.
in
Yeah,
Canby.
They also have wells that they get water out of. But
Yeah.
we tried to raise concerns about it in various ways, but sadly, the money interests are tough. to
Very
deal with.
quickly, we started diving into some of the interesting subject that is this subject. And it's a national subject, folks. It's not just regional. It just happens that now I'm sitting with two regional experts, essentially, because of this project. And so back to the film. So you ran for office how many times? Couple times? Three times. And I think when I first met you, you just had done that, or you were just getting ready to do that, about 2010 or 11.
2004 was the first time.
Okay.
Then I ran in 2006 and 2008.
Okay.
And in 2006, I won in every city in the district except for Malala.
Wow.
But the rural areas were too tough, and I was a Democrat running in a Republican district. So,
Exactly.
but in the process, I met a lot of people, and,
Right.
and that about that same time, there was a terrible ballot measure that got on the ballot, Measure 37, and Measure 37 was basically there was a group. Oregon's land use planning program began. The real major thing was 1973, when Senate Bill 100 was passed. And that put urban growth boundaries around all of our cities and
Right.
towns and saved our farms from sprawl.
Thank goodness.
But and that worked and there were efforts to take it down, but they didn't succeed. It was pretty darn good until the very early part of 2000, and then Measure 37 was on the ballot and got voted by the people, and it was scary. What it basically allowed were people that owned their land before 1973 to essentially do whatever they wanted to do.
Wow.
And there were 300-unit subdivisions proposed all around us. There were billboards proposed. There was all sorts of stuff. Thankfully, the Oregonian newspaper at the time was a real newspaper, and it publicized a lot of this. We did everything we could to make people aware of it. The legislature was trying to figure out how to deal with it. All this is in the film now because there's a lot of drama around it. Because what happened was the legislature was at that time, the Senate was controlled by the Democrats and the House by the Republicans. When Senate Bill 100 was passed, it was a bipartisan thing, and our governor at the time, Tom McCall, was a Republican, but a very conservative-minded Republican, and it was a bipartisan effort. And by 2004, that bipartisanship had gone, and Republicans were not so involved in conservation efforts anymore, and so they were not really to take a stand against this ballot measure. So it got passed. We fought against it. I actually raised money for my campaign by people who cared about land use planning, and I ran on I remember one of my campaign pictures was "Oregon is not for sale," and we were just like really trying hard to how to deal with this, but that ballot, then Measure 49, where the Democrats took control of the House in 2006. And that allowed them to create a new ballot measure to counteract the Measure 37 one. By one vote, they had a one vote majority, so
Wow.
it wasn't much. But they created a Measure 49, and Measure 49 took us back to more like what Senate Bill 100 had done and saved the Willamette Valley. But all of that went into my thinking about these things, and I continued to be became chair of our local community planning organization. Was involved in various planning issues, and I got to know Joe. So I don't remember exactly.
When he was on the paper.
Yeah.
He was on the paper, right.
And you had run your third failed attempt, I'm sorry to say,
Yep.
at the state legislature. So what year and how did this conversation about making a film come about?
Well,
Well,
can I
Joe
add
can
one
talk about
one
that,
real
yeah.
quick thing about Measure 49?
Yes.
I mean, it's important that the will of the people be respected. And the cool thing is that Measure 49 passed by a bigger margin than Measure 37 passed, which really drove it home that really Measure 37, the way it was written, if it would have been written a little bit differently, people probably would have voted it down. So I just don't think most people understood what it was. And so 49 really kind of put it out there, and people were like, oh.
Are you alluding to the fact, Joe, that very good, clear communication is of the essence?
Oh, yeah. Wars get started because people don't communicate.
So did you think about making a film and a conversation with him one day over coffee? Or what was
in my car in the summer of
inception?
2019. We were working on the other thing, the unfinished film about a trip he took to Russia. And I think you just mentioned it. Hey, I want to do this.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, we started making a documentary. In 1991, I took a trip to the former Soviet Union with 5 other Americans who were involved in plant stuff. And we traveled around around the Soviet Union. And I guess by the time I wanted to make there was a guy who took that trip with us who had a big old video camera and a whole trunk full of tapes. And I thought it was silly at the time that he did that. And he wasn't a professional videographer, but he did like 30 some hours of video. And it had been languishing, and we thought, we need to take that stuff and make a documentary.
Did you come back with seeds or plants?
At that time, yeah, there was some easy stuff to bring back.
Nice
material, yeah.
Wow.
And introduced some plants to the United States that really were not known here, so that was fun.
Right, exactly.
So we started. So I forgot that's how we started this, Joe. And then then that just sort of like I was already involved with these with people involved in land use. I might have been already on 1,000 Friends of Oregon on their board of directors.
Yeah.
And so let's make a film.
Yeah, and I said, hey, I'm learning how to do this anyways. Video's already becoming like a majority of my business. Let's do it. And we the rest is history.
Approaching the 50th anniversary of the Senate Bill 100, which was just last year. So it was like, and I don't know how much it was on my mind at the time, but since we've started making the film, 4 of the people we've interviewed have passed away.
Yeah.
Did you write an outline? Did you write the script? Did you start doing a storyboard after that conversation the first time? How did that proceed?
It took a while before we kind of knew what the shape of the film would be. We knew we wanted to tell it chronologically, but we had to consume a lot of materials to do this. There were some really good books that we looked through and read. And
a lot of what she already knew, though,
and what he already
knew,
mixed together. And then we started doing interviews, and then the cool thing about a documentary is the interviews kind of sort of like tell you what the documentary is going to be about.
Give you some form.
Yeah.
We started in 2019. We interviewed was it 3 people?
Yeah, 3
Henry
people.
Richmond, Dick Benner, and Bob Stacy, who were the original. Henry Richmond founded 1,000 Friends of Oregon, and Dick Benner and Bob Stacy were the first.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, the minute you start doing this with intention, and then your brain leads to all the places that you went, you realize that in the process, not only did you tell the story, but you conserved some other folks' stories that overlapped with the story.
We realized that we're
that's really cool. I'm so glad to hear that you were able to do that.
We figured actually we're historians.
Yeah, because 10 or 20 years from now, you probably wouldn't have gotten a lot of the people.
Well, that was one of the things he said too. Was at the time he's like, we can't waste any time because these people are not getting any younger. They may not be with us. And it turned out, we got
kind of how amazing. I feel about this effort too, and why I'm glad you guys could join me today, and that we could just, do this thing from the hip, but it ain't. There's not a lot of pressure in Mount Angel, you
No.
know, unless you're some kind of a Monsignor.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of pressure in Mount Angel, and that's the beautiful scenario here, is that we get to share these authentic conversations about, in this case, a very originally authentic story of yours. But I would submit all of us, because all of us who've lived here, moved here, relocated here, have fallen in love, if we stayed for a while, we've fallen in love with the lush, fertile environment that this particularly Willamette Valley nurtures and engenders, you know, in a very significant way. I mean, I was making the comment to somebody, my son, my younger son. I said, you know, that field we just that cornfield, I think they get 2 or 3 crops of different things out of that field annually, which is how fertile this friggin' Willamette Valley is. Am I wrong?
It's got some of the best farmland in the world.
And the season, though, because I saw them put this really lush green thing. I don't know what it was. One of my neighbors said at one point that they sell seed. Some of these crops are for seed for, I don't know, Iowa or whatever. But it seems like they can pretty much maximize every season. The commercial farmers I'm talking about, you know.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's amazing crops grown just around our nursery. But I thought it would be kind of this whole idea of making the film was that the vast majority of Oregonians don't know the story,
particularly anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, when you watch the film, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, some of the going back to Senate Bill 100, one of my very favorite parts of the film was some video taken by a very good friend of ours, Bill Bradbury, who sadly has passed away. But he in 1974, they went around Oregon. He went around with the people from the state, and they had meetings all over, and talked to people about what do you want your area to look like? What's important to you? And it's amazing to watch that. I mean, to think that, you know, that was something so remarkable for its day to do that. So, you know, it feels to me like if we didn't make this film, I mean, we needed to make it because the Oregonians need to know the story.
Absolutely, number one.
So we don't lose it.
Number one.
Because we've saved our farmland. But it's constantly under pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask just a couple more questions, because I know you guys, you're headed to the state fair, which is all week?
Well, it's done. This is the last day.
Oh, okay.
It's been
And you're going to
weeks.
spend a little time doing some PR?
We have a booth there.
Okay. So 2 questions. OPB, any interest, any capability,
Great interest.
any conversations,
Yeah.
Great interest, conversations, but no success.
commitments?
No.
Nobody.
So if anybody watching this knows somebody from OPB,
Exactly.
we'd love to begin.
yeah,
I mean,
we're not going to charge them for it or anything. It's, you know.
Right. Just
I
please
saw-
run it late at night. Come on, just to
Yeah.
help us expand the
Yeah,
awareness.
sure.
It's all about the awareness.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a documentary about Oregon made by people in Oregon.
Exactly.
It should be something that
And frankly, I'm going to even tie it further together. Because of modernity, because of technology, of which Oregon has a lot of technology, which has been a lot of pressure on the land that is Oregon in certain places, like Hillsboro, Oregon. I won't name any others, and not to call anybody out. But as we all know, because I certainly made a lot of money over many years working for a lot of the high-tech companies in Oregon, including Tektronix and Xerox and InFocus and you know, Wilsonville and blah, blah, blah. So I'm highly sympathetic. So okay, and then I wanted to ask you about this effort that you had mentioned to me underfoot to get a curriculum. Who's doing that? Who you talking to? How's that going? To accompany the film into schools, so you could gift it to teachers, essentially. I mean, it's all on the website. The film is for free on the website, folks. You can all watch it right now, AnOregonStory.com. But you can watch it here in the little theater. It'll be really cool.
It's more fun
in
to
the
watch it with other
Oktoberfest.
people.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. Because there's parts where people are laughing. There's parts where some people will cry.
Yes.
It's amazing.
And
the story about land use, people go, oh, it must be boring. It's like, no, you're going to have emotion.
So that curriculum
So
question.
the curriculum. So what we're working on is a 40-minute classroom version, and but before we did anything, we met with some teachers, and said, how should we do this? And their advice was to make the film. Obviously make it in a way that it's like directed at maybe 16 to 20-year-olds, but then afterwards, then they're going to take the film and then they're going to create a curriculum with lesson plans surrounding it, and they're going to try to do it in such a way that it checks off. How there's like civic standards and different things. It's going to try to check some of those boxes.
And are these people like in Malala, or are these?
No, they're all over.
Okay.
They're all over the state.
Just people you knew?
Yeah, people we knew, and then every time we met one, they would introduce us to somebody else.
Sweetness.
It was beautiful. And so
Well,
we have actual professional curriculum writers who are going to do this with us.
Okay, excellent. Glad to hear it. And you're going to keep me informed on that so I can share it with my substitutes.
For sure.
Because that sounds uniquely and particularly like how do I want to say it, an emergency kit component for any substitute.
Oh, yeah.
If you end up in a class without a lesson plan or much available or anything obvious to do. And often, yes, you can just put on a film, but how much better to put on a film that had the thing, maybe
discussion topics
maybe even
afterwards.
built into the film, like it's the last 30 minutes of a version of the film that asks questions and denote, it's just voiceovers and I don't know.
But definitely there'll be discussion topics, there'll be activities and things for the kids to do based on the film.
For a whole full-time teacher too. I get it. Okay, so and lastly, what time do we have, Joe?
It's 1:51.
Okay, we're doing pretty good. See, my sense of that is pretty good. I'm a musician, I'm always thinking of the rhythm. But I wanted to add one bit of news that I hadn't had an opportunity to yet share with you guys.
But we're getting live on TV.
Live on TV. This is a first, literally. Not for me not trying to be in touch, Joe.
Okay.
But I'm so glad that you reached out today. I did a press release about the Oktoberfest programming, as you've seen and as you've seen the content of how I've done that. I think it was a week ago today, actually, as I recall. And it was while my younger son, who works for Andrea Salinas, was in town visiting me and helping me do a few things. And often what I'll do is I'll spend an hour or two writing and putting, contrary dynamic elements into an email like that. And then I'll spend another 2 or 3 hours customizing the two, right? And in this case, I formatted it specifically as a press release about the programming for the Oktoberfest, of which your film is a huge component. I've given it exposure every single day because I care. And wouldn't you know, that was Monday. I think it was Wednesday. I received, I believe it was an email from a food and entertainment writer at, guess where? The Statesman's Journal.
Oh.
And she was specifically kind of reaching out to connect specifically about the program. And specifically about the advent of films being played at this year's Oktoberfest.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Great.
And so, day and a half later, I think it was last Friday, which may be one of the reasons I didn't make that film festival. It was a busy day. At the end of the day, we had arranged that she would call me. And within the first 3 to 4 minutes, after a little bit of initial nice conversation and orientation, I said, well, do you want some background? And she said yes. Well, that was the kiss of death for her, right? 55 minutes later, she's saying, thank you so much, John. And I've got what I need for I think she was just going to write a sentence or something about the films. This film's going to be playing. I don't know exactly, right? I don't know. You don't know. You know this.
Yeah.
As a guy like me, a person like you used to be, it's like what you're going to use. I don't unless I make you sign the contract that you're going to run it through. Whatever. And so. The bottom line is she got well informed about me, this theater, the story of this theater, your film, the other films and the performers that I'm having here during. I didn't want to keep it singular, and so. But the biggest cool thing was that, of course, I did achieve my goal. She said after she said that. She said, I'm going to speak to one of my editors. I think you really have an interesting story to tell there at the Mount Angel Theater Studio.
So it's going to be more than just a note. Yeah.
Presumably, and hopefully at some point they'll do an article about what I've been doing here. And now, because we have all put our stamp of approval, so-called, so to speak, and shaken on our very informal, really no financial gain endeavors here, although I hope to make a little bit of money over the Oktoberfest. I hope no one would be mad at me for that. I've been paying for this place on my own. So I'm really happy and glad that all those synergies came together to manifest maybe some more exposure, and that my time spent on that press release was ultimately rewarded. That was about a 1% or a 2% return. I think I had about 50 addresses.
Yeah.
And I got one so far.
So all you need is one.
One. I think that's a 2% return. In the old days, they'd say you got 2 or 3% return on average on your direct mail pieces, right? When I started as the commercial photographer, you did all you could do was direct mail, basically, and call them on the phone.
Because you didn't have the internet.
Or stop by and knock on the door or whatever. Yeah, exactly right. So I really appreciate you guys coming and sitting down and taking the big risk to speak to the whole world, say hello. Say goodbye.
Bye.
We're going to see you soon again here at the Mount Angel Theater Mount Angel Theater Studio, or now I'm calling this endeavor Matt's TV. And you'll see Jim and Joe this afternoon in Salem at the Oregon State Fair, and then back here September 12th through 15th. For the Mount Angel Oktoberfest 2024. It's in September, I think, because of the weather. But I don't ask somebody on the Oktoberfest board.
Well, they spell October with a K, so it's obviously an exception. But,
it's not.
But I will come to the first and second
Meet
showing.
the filmmaker. Joe, are you going to be around? Maybe not.
I'm not going to be.
You won't be around. So we get at least Jim, and together they made this happen, and together we're making this happen, and we're just trying to propagate good ideas and mindful thought. I will let you know when, and you should come early so that you can get here easily and all of that kind of stuff. And he'll introduce the film, and I'll introduce him, and then he'll introduce me. And then we'll, give it a little pa send off, and that'll be that. So thanks again, gentlemen. This is a DIY, right? Do it yourself TV studio in Mount Angel, Oregon. Means I got to get up now and turn off the live stream to YouTube. So
Where's the crew?
This is how I do it. Well, there's the automated scene switcher. The software engineers managed to keep moving the camera around, but that's about it. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'll see you soon. I've got Peter, my friend Peter, coming tomorrow, and the honey lady, the local honey lady, coming on Wednesday. Cool. Hold on 1 second, gentlemen. Just wave to the camera.
Are you going to have popcorn?
I will have popcorn.
Yay.
Nice.
That's great.
I have a popcorn maker. I might have a beer dispenser.
Very nice.
And I'm going to say stop.